Great. I'm going to get this done this morning. This afternoon, Yvonne and I are on our way to Washington State for a nice little night off. I don't have an opportunity to wait for the noise outside to stop, so you're going to hear the guys working on the house, is my guess, and they're hopefully going to be finished up, I would think, early next week, so they should be done with our house altogether. And then you guys don't have to worry about hammering and noise in the background, other than kids and cats. And anyway, let's go ahead and get things started. First up, Detroit's in Buffalo in a matchup between teams that are not going to be in the playoffs. Detroit's 28, 38, and 11. They're 2-8 in their last 10. They won their last game. Buffalo's 24, 40, and 12. They're 3-6 and 1 in their last 10. They won their last game. Leonard's been confirmed in net for the Buffalo Sabres. No confirmation on who's in net for Detroit. Probably Howard. Leonard's numbers have been on the downturn, and the one thing I wonder with Robin Leonard is if he moves on from Buffalo this year, what the other team's going to get, because Leonard's numbers were good at the start of the year, and they've fallen over the last, say, 30 games. But how much of that has to do with the fact that Buffalo's out of it, their defense isn't very good, so he's likely facing a lot of more difficult shots than a guy in, say, Boston is. So it'll be fun to see if he moves on this summer, wherever he moves out to, does that team get better numbers out of him because he won't be playing for Buffalo anymore. And for Detroit, they already made their move when they got rid of Mrazek. I don't know if they keep Howard past this year either. There's going to be some movement with goaltenders this summer, and it'll be fun to see where they land up. But as I said in recent days, it feels again more like they're just shuffling the sort of B-level goaltenders, that none of the A-level guys are really available. And I don't know that anybody's going to get a fix unless they have that rookie coming up from juniors, or some kid coming in who's going to save them. We may end up seeing some of these veterans out of work come this summer. Next up. So Pittsburgh, 43, 28, and 6. They're 5-3 and 2 in their last 10. They lost their last game. They're in against New Jersey. New Jersey's 40, 28, and 8. They're 7-3 in their last 10. They won their last 3 in a row. Brassard looks like he's out of the lineup for Pittsburgh tonight. Kincaid is the starter for New Jersey. Coming into tonight, Pittsburgh's now 7 points back of Washington. They're tied with Philly, but they got one game in hand on Philly. And that's for second place. New Jersey, on the other hand, is the second wild card. They're 3 points ahead of Florida. They've played one extra game. What this means is, as long as they beat Pittsburgh tonight, they remain in control of their own destiny. And they put extra pressure on Florida. If they lose, then it's really going to depend on what Florida does as to whether or not they stay in control of their own destiny or they lose it. This is a big night for a lot of teams. New Jersey doesn't get much bigger than this. They got Crosby and the Pens coming into town. New Jersey's decent at home. Pittsburgh's got an iffy record on the road. As long as New Jersey can hold form, hold serve here, and come out with a win against Pittsburgh, honestly, at this point, it looks like they probably make the playoffs. There's so little to choose between who's in and who's out. As I've said many times, a good team's going to miss the playoffs. Multiple good teams are going to miss the playoffs. The problem, of course, comes in that there's going to be a good team that misses the playoffs and fires their coach, who, if they'd finished with a couple of more points, wouldn't be firing their coach. That usually happens. Happens a lot in football, where, at the end of the season, the NFL coaches, half of them seem to be out of work right away. And we'll probably see some of that in the NHL as well. John Hines' job is pretty safe right now. I would think even if Jersey missed, even if something happened and they fell right out of the playoffs, they've come so far this year. They've gained so many points on last year's finish that I can't see them not keeping their coach around. I can't see his job being in trouble. Now, if Lou Lamoriello was there, then Lou tended to pull the trigger pretty quick when he was in New Jersey. There were times where he'd fire a coach and I'd be like, really? They just had a bad week. But that doesn't seem to be the case now in New Jersey. Things seem to be pretty stable. And for Pittsburgh, They have a fading hope that they might get themselves close to Washington. I'd be surprised if they don't start resting certain guys for the stretch drive now, but we'll see what happens there. Next up, Tampa, 51, 21, and 4 altogether. They're 6-4 in their last 10. They lost their last 2. They're in against Boston. Boston's 47, 17, and 11. They're 5-2 and 3 in their last 10. They lost their last game, which was the shootout loss in Winnipeg. Ernie is out for the Tampa Bay Lightning. In Boston, Rask is the starter. Corrali apparently is out, but Backes is back. David Backes is supposed to return to the lineup tonight. So Boston and Tampa come into this 1 point apart. And Boston has a game in hand. Now, if Boston can win this game, then they're in the driver's seat in the division. If they lose this game in regulation, that's done. And Tampa then is a team with some breathing room, 3 points ahead. Sure, Boston's got that game in hand, but as long as Tampa finishes strong, and they can, I know some Tampa fans are wavering a bit in their belief in their team right now, but they absolutely can turn this around. It's a long season. It's impossible for any team to go wire to wire as the best team in the league. It just can't be done. There's too many teams, too many coaches, too many different aspects of a game that at any point in time a team can turn things around for the better or for the worse. The dividing line between winning and losing is so small. And tonight, that should be the case as well. Boston is 6 points ahead of Toronto. That's closer than it was not that long ago. And Boston is, and again, I've taken some flack from Boston fans for my view on the Bruins and for where they are in the power rankings. And I know TSN, I believe TSN put them in number 1 this week. They're 5-2 and 3 in their last 10. They should not be a number 1 team. I get that they're doing it with a lot of injuries right now, but they're not the best team in the league right now. Tonight could sway me in that direction a little bit, but again, Tampa's been on a bit of a cold streak, so we'll see what happens. But it's going to be probably a great game, and I don't know how much of it I'm going to be able to see or hear because where we're going in the States, it's going to depend on how many of my apps work in the States as to how much I'm able to hear or see. So fingers crossed on that one. Florida Panthers are 39, 29, and 7. They're 6-4 in their last 10. They lost their last game. They're in against Ottawa, 26, 39, and 11. They're 3-7 in their last 10. They've lost 6 in a row. Reimer is the starter for Florida. Florida is, of course, 3 points behind New Jersey, as I stated earlier, with a game in hand. And Ottawa at this point seems to be all in for Dahlin. And those 6 losses in a row came at a good time because Arizona's passed them, Vancouver's passed them. Now Ottawa finds themselves in a position where they have a very good chance going to the draft lottery of potentially drafting first. So a season that's a complete disaster if they can get that number 1 pick in the lottery. And if Ottawa drafts Dahlin, then everything starts looking a heck of a lot better for next year. And I'm probably predicting them to make the playoffs. That's how much I would expect things to change with Dahlin and Carlson on that blue line. That'd be pretty crazy if that's what ends up happening, and it could. There's a 11% chance that they pick first right now. 10 or 11% chance. I did the odds video the other day, and turns out those are the accurate odds. So I didn't need to update it when the NHL officially released them. So thanks to Pierre Lebrun for getting that information, for the information being accurate, which is not always the case when dealing with pundits and dealing with rumors and dealing with this kind of stuff. It can be hard to separate fact from fiction. I do my best on this channel to do that. So if something's being reported and people are like, why aren't you reporting on these rumors? Because they're rumors. The Florida Panthers making the playoffs is becoming a rumor, not so much fact. And it's not their fault. It's just the teams ahead of them are playing really, really well. Florida's played really excellent hockey. The one thing I will say is this. You can blame Florida based on the fact that their record was poor the first half of the year. If Florida had played all year the way they're playing now, it's just a matter of whether or not they can catch Toronto. Because right now they're nowhere near Toronto, But if you look at the record since, say, I would guess January 1st till now, they're not that far off. But when you have put yourself in the hole like that at the start of the year, it's really, really difficult to dig your way out. Dallas, 39, 30, and 8 altogether. They're 2-6-2 in their last 10. They won their last game, which was over Philly. They're against the Minnesota Wild, who are 42, 24, and 10. 5-2-3 in their last 10. They lost their last 2. Devin Dubnyk starting for Minnesota. Dallas is 5 points behind the second wild card. They're not making it. St. Louis is third in the division. They're 3 points ahead of St. Louis. They have to be looking over their shoulder at St. Louis. Technically, yes. If Dallas wins this game in regulation, Minnesota may very well be a team that has some playoff peril. But Dallas on the road is not as good as they are at home. And recently at home, they haven't been all that great either. And they had that wonderful 6-game road trip where they lost every single game. So that may be fresh in their memories. And it depends. Like, either they come out and play for pride and play as well as they can, or we're in a situation where they're just done. And for Minnesota, there has to be some desperation in their game. This might be a chippy kind of game, but it's going to be a very green kind of game. Which is just fine with me. It's the current Minnesota team and the former Minnesota team, which I would think that's the only reason why the Stars are still are a team that wears green. You think about it, and Texas isn't known for producing teams that wear green. So Dallas still paying homage to Minnesota via wearing green. And tonight they may pay homage to Minnesota by losing to Minnesota, a team that's in a much better spot to do something in the playoffs than Dallas are. But yeah, I don't have a whole lot of hope left for Dallas right now. In fact, I don't really have any. It's kind of gone. San Jose, the Sharks are 44, 23, and 10 overall. They're 8-1-1 in their last 10. They lost their last game. They're in against Nashville, who are 49, 16, and 11. Not 1, 11. 6-2-2 in their last 10. They won their last game. Saros is the starter in all likelihood for Nashville tonight. Tolvanen was at the morning skate. There hasn't been word yet officially that I've seen that he's making his debut for Nashville tonight. But he is at the morning skate, so read into that what you will. They're first in their division. They're 5 points ahead of Winnipeg. San Jose is second in the division, 5 points behind Vegas, and 7 points ahead of LA and Anaheim, who are tied for third place. It's not as tight in that division as it once was. Remember all the California teams, and it looked like it was coming down to the wire? No, San Jose got hot. Anaheim and LA did not. San Jose to me is the best of the 3 California teams, but they've been the best of the 3 California teams for a while. And tonight, if they win, they pull themselves within 3 points of Vegas, and Vegas has looked human lately. Not so much Vegas-like as human-like. I still don't see them catching Vegas, but again, I said that when it was a 10-point lead. Now it's a 5-point lead. So it's closer than it was if we had an extra 5 or 6 games in a season beyond what we have. Absolutely, I could see San Jose getting in there, but right now I just can't see it. So yeah, that's as far as I'll go with that. I mean, and for Nashville, 5 points ahead of Winnipeg. They're pretty much home and cold. But again, if they lose, Winnipeg wins. It's 3 points, and we're down to the stage where most of these teams have 5 games left. Florida has 6. There are some that have 4. Florida only has 6 left because of the snowstorm in Boston, just the storm in Boston wiping out that game between Boston and Florida, or else they wouldn't have games in hand either. Things are really pretty even, and with only 5 games left, you can look at a 5-point lead and go, well, that's not a whole lot, but it is. With 5 games left, it's actually quite a bit. And tonight, I don't, while Nashville hasn't necessarily been playing their best hockey lately, I don't really look at this game and say, well, Nashville's going to lose, and then Winnipeg's going to win, and then we're going to, see some kind of a fight for first in the division. I just don't see that happening, personally. Next up, Winnipeg. So the aforementioned Jets. 47, 19, and 10 overall. They're 7-2-1 in their last 10. They've won 6 in a row. So Winnipeg's keeping it interesting. They're in against Chicago, who were 31, 36, and 10, 2, 6, and 2 in their last 10. They lost their last game. Comrie and Forsberg are the starters. Now, Eric Comrie had a good showing his first game in net for Winnipeg. Forsberg has been up and down. He's had some good games. I'm not going to throw shade at the guy and say anything bad about him because he's had some good games. Now, for Winnipeg, they're 10 points ahead of third place Minnesota. So Winnipeg is as entrenched in that spot as they can get. However, they are only 5 points back of Nashville. A win tonight over a very mediocre Chicago squad could get them closer, depending on what Nashville does at home against San Jose. And Nashville's excellent at home. The thing is, Nashville's excellent on the road, too. Winnipeg on the road, they've improved over where they were, say, a month ago. Chicago at home, I don't know that it matters where Chicago plays right now. They're 5 games below 500. If you went by the old stats and you went and said overtime losses you count as losses, they're 15 games below 500. It's been a rough year for Chicago fans. First rough year they've had in a long time. And that's why I think that a quick turnaround could happen. I don't see it starting tonight. But, there is a rivalry there, being divisional rivals. And Winnipeg's going to want to go into the playoffs strong. 6-game winning streak helps, but there are still, they still got 6 games left in their season, so they got 6 more games during which they can continue to build momentum and maybe put more pressure on Nashville. The only concern I would have is, if they win, say, 11 out of 12 going to the playoffs, are they tiring themselves out before the playoffs? Does that make them more vulnerable in a 7-game series against a Minnesota Wild? That's my only concern. Next up, Columbus. The Blue Jackets 43-29-5. They're 9-1 in their last 10. They won their last game. They're in against Calgary Flames. Calgary's 35-32-10 overall. They're 3-7 in their last 10, and they've lost 6 in a row. Before this 6-game losing streak, absolutely, Calgary was looking like they were going to threaten for that playoff spot. It was going to be, close, and now they're mathematically eliminated from the playoffs. For Columbus, they're the number 1 wild card. They're 3 points ahead of New Jersey, and they're 1 point behind that tie between Pittsburgh and Philly. So again, here we are. It's the end of March, and we're talking about how tight things are in the Metro. There's a separation between first and second, but between second and fourth, it's really close. Between second and fifth, it's really close. There are 4 points separating second from fifth in that division. And if it wasn't for a few of those Metro Division teams falling off, it'd probably be even closer, that we'd have even more teams within that 5 or 6 point range. But the Rangers fell off, the Islanders fell off, and Carolina just couldn't get it done. And none of them are playing tonight. There's a real lack of teams that are out that are playing tonight. No confirmed starters between Columbus and Calgary. I would imagine Smith. I think Smith plays out the string from here. And for Columbus, I would imagine Bobrovsky, because they want to finish as high up as possible. I mean, if they could somehow finish second in that division, that would be considered a huge success for Columbus. The fact that they're sitting at 91 points right now, considering where they were a couple months ago, is pretty amazing, actually. And the fact that they're going to make the playoffs for the first time ever in a second consecutive season. That's huge. Building up and having a solid season is one thing, but having continued success is another. And at least now Columbus looks like they're ready to have that. And Dubois is just starting to come into his own and starting to show the potential that was the reason that they drafted him. So potentially a big season for Columbus next year as well. Maybe there is some long-term success here, and perhaps next year Columbus will be the best team in the division. Does Washington stay up there, especially if they lose Karlsson as a free agent? They can't afford to keep anybody else. Does Pittsburgh start losing players? If Pittsburgh falls out in the first round, do they start tinkering with their lineup? Yeah, Columbus could absolutely find themselves in an excellent position next season. Not that Columbus fans care about that right now. Edmonton and Vancouver. Well, that's it for that one. Let's move on. Now, Edmonton's 34-37-6 overall. They're 5-3-2 in their last 10. They've lost their last 2. They were leading Columbus, and then something happened there. Vancouver 28-40-9. They're 3-7 in their last 10. They've won 2 in a row. So now that it doesn't matter if Vancouver wins, and I kind of want them to lose because I want them to have the best chance going to the draft lottery, they're winning. They couldn't be more mathematically eliminated from the playoffs if they tried, and they're winning. So it's a frustrating time indeed, because while Arizona's getting better, I kind of wanted Vancouver to not get better. But, you know, the Island of Misfit Toys, as I called it after their last win, kind of makes sense, because what they've got on their roster right now is a lot of players who are question marks going into next year. Where are they going to play? Are they going to play? If the Sedins, are they going to play at all? Sutter got a place on the team next year? And of course, you know, they got Mott and Jokinen in that trade for Vanek. Vanek's insane explosion as an offensive player in Columbus is something that I kind of predicted when I raged about that trade. And I don't understand it, because when they traded Vanek, my opinion was, all right, well, then I guess as long as we lose out the rest of the year, it's fine. And that's not happening. And it's weird, because I don't look at the Canucks right now and say, well, Bo Horvat's a major part of this, so at least it bodes well for Bo. Bo hasn't really been a major part of this at all. So, and of course Besser's injured. So I'm looking at all this with a grain of salt, and it's easier for a team to win when they're mathematically eliminated. The Canucks did this all the time in the 80s. They would have a brutal record, get mathematically eliminated, and then all of a sudden they were a good team. And it's like, really? So I don't read a whole lot into it. I know we're probably going to get sold in the offseason that this run they've been on is indicative that they're better than their record. But we heard that last offseason too. And for Edmonton, this is a fight down the stretch here to get McDavid as many points as they can. And he's playing relatively well, and we'll see what he gets. I mean, the Art Ross at this point is his. I can't see anybody touching the Art Ross but him. But the actual Hart, right? I've done 2 videos on that. I've technically done 3 if you count the Ted Lindsay video that's on Patreon. So, yeah, that's kind of, we'll just cut that topic off right there, because I've done that. I've done it. Arizona. Speaking of a team that's done it lately, Arizona. 27-39-11 overall. They're 6-4 in their last 10. They've won 2 in a row. They're in against LA. LA's 42-28-7 overall. They're 5-3-2 in their last 10. They won their last game. No confirmation on who's starting. It's too early in the day for that. However, this is going to be a fun little game. So LA is tied for 3rd with Anaheim. The team that loses out of those 2 may find themselves out of the playoffs. And Arizona just beat Tampa and Vegas. So Arizona's absolutely playing giant killer. They're playing spoiler, and they're playing well. And if they win today, they pull within 11 games of 500, which would mean that since that huge losing streak at the start of the year, they've been a 500 team. Hey, you've got to start somewhere. You've got to look at something and say, well, at least this is hope for the future. So at least there's that. And for LA, they have to win this game. You're getting Arizona on a back-to-back. You can't afford to lose the game, because then you're opening the door for Anaheim to knock you out. You're opening the door for Colorado to knock you out too. And St. Louis already looks like they're probably going to be the first wild card. So it's going to be one heck of a fight down the stretch here, and this is one LA has to win against a team that hasn't had a game they have to win really since October, and they're playing really well. Very fun hockey watching the Arizona Coyotes. Again, if you have a chance to watch this game tonight, I highly recommend it. Game of the night, probably Tampa and Boston, I would think. And yet Pittsburgh and Jersey should be one heck of a dogfight. And San Jose and Nashville, if you want to watch a game in the West, should be excellent. Yeah, so there's my picks for the day. There's my feelings on the games. There's your preview. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.